We're on Disney's oldest cruise ship, the Disney Magic. So, how do things stack up in 2022, almost 2023? So, we got the opportunity to go on the Disney Magic out of Galveston for their 7 day very maritime cruise. With this being my second Disney cruise and our 21st since cruising restarted in 2021, we've had a lot of great experiences on all kinds of ship, including Disney's newest ship, the Disney Wish, part of their Triton class of brand new ships. So, we're going to do a quick review. I'm going to break down into multiple categories, and the first one's going to be food. If you haven't been on a Disney cruise yet, then expect some of the best food you'll ever have on a cruise. Unlike most cruise lines, there's no main dining room. Each night, you're going to rotate between three different restaurants: Lumiere's, Animator's Palette, and Rapunzel's Royal Hall, with an early and a late seating available. One's at 6:15 and one's at 8:15. On a 7 day cruise, that means you'll eat at each place twice. And once in the middle of the cruise, you're going to go to your first restaurant for pirate night and a pirate themed menu that is the same across all three restaurants. Every other day, you'll have a completely different menu with no repeats. The buffet is available for breakfast and lunch, but not available for dinner, unlike most cruise lines. However, there are other things available on the top deck, and the times for the buffet and the restaurants during the day will vary slightly, but usually breakfast is around 8 and lunch is around noon. There are several quick eat type of places available when the buffet is closed. There's a pizza place, soft serve ice cream, chicken strips, sandwich and soup and salad place, as well as shawarma and burgers at Donald's Duckin. All of which we found ourselves eating at least once a day at those quick eat places because we missed breakfast or lunch at the buffet or the restaurants. There's also free room service available 24 hours a day by calling on the phone in your stateroom, which we did order on a couple occasions and we found it to be great. Breakfast and lunch hours in the buffet cabanas usually runs 2 hours a day for each meal. For lunch, you also have food at Rapunzel's table and for breakfast at Lumiere's. On the final day of the cruise, you have the option of having breakfast at your last dining room, which also happens to be the first on your 7 day cruise. I found all of the food to be top notch, although there were some items I didn't particularly love in the dining room, like the oyster Rockefeller. If you haven't seen me, I tried it and I didn't really care for it. There's also a few items in the buffet I didn't care for, but my wife loves the stone crab. The stone crab claws are awesome. I don't care for crab. It's too much work for too little payoff. At the quick eat places on the Lido deck, I pretty much enjoyed everything, including the burger of the day, except for the pizza, which was probably some of the lowest quality I've experienced on a cruise ship. The crust was more like that pre-made cafeteria pizza like you'd find at Walmart, where every other cruise I've been on looks like they make the dough from scratch. We did share our dining table with two other new friends, and they did have some dietary restrictions. So they pre ordered all of their meals the day before for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and each of their meals were prepared specifically for them each day. So if you do have a dietary or an allergic restriction, then let them know and they will take care of you. Moving on to shows, there's three different Broadway style shows on this 7 day cruise. There's a retelling of Cinderella's story with a twist. There's also a Rapunzel show and a Disney original that recaps a bunch of different stories called Disney Dreams. They're all really great shows. Twice Charmed was Cinderella's story, and it's great for its original spin. Disney Dreams is full of nostalgia with some of the greatest hits of the 90s and 2000s like Aladdin, Lion King, and Frozen. Rapunzel's was probably the least original, being mostly a carbon copy of Disney's Tangled, but still interesting how they tackle the live action horse Maximus. Altogether, they are worth checking out whether you're kids, you have kids, or you're just Disney adults enjoying a cruise. I would recommend everyone check out these shows, and if you don't like them, just come back here, tell me all about it later, and you can whine to me. On top of the shows, they do have live entertainment on 3 of the other nights. Our entertainers were a ventriloquist, Lynn Trefziger, I hope I said that right, a comedic percussionist duo, Buckets and Boards, and a magician, John Armstrong, featuring his tiny little plunger. Each one had a unique family oriented show that runs twice a night, opposite of the dinner schedules. So if you have the early dinner seating at 6:15, your show is at 8:15, and if you had the late dinner schedule, your show is at 6:15. There's also an adults only show every other night by each of the performers, and they're worth showing up for each time. One night they did have a showing of Strange Worlds. It's a new Disney movie out at the theater, which I thought to be actually pretty good. At first, I was reluctant to go to the ventriloquist show, Lynn Trefziger, again, hope I said that right, but she was actually hilarious and delightful. The comedic percussion group, Buckets and Boards, was also a great duo, both funny and good musicians. They will entertain you during the entire run of their family and adult-only shows. The Magician was an equally good show featuring the tiny plunger that defies all logic, and I've yet to figure out how exactly the plunger knows which card is which. Moving on to other entertainment. So there's so much to do on a Disney cruise. If you have kids, no kids, or you are a kid, there's so much stuff to do pretty much around the clock besides the main shows that run twice a night. There's also a bunch of other types of entertainment. There is adult-only entertainment happening in the club, Fathoms, each night, so don't think that if you aren't a kid or you don't have kids, you won't have a good time. There is a dedicated theater running free movies all the time, most of which are still out in the theaters themselves, like Wakanda Forever, Thor, and of course Strange Worlds. There are occasionally free movies out on the open deck as well, usually family-oriented showings. Being the Maritime Cruise, there's also a bunch of holiday-themed fun, including Santa, Mrs. Claus, and other great photo opportunities. One of the things we've gotten on all of our Disney cruises is the unlimited picture package, which is well worth it if you plan on buying any of them. There are also backdrops that they change out every night and run during the evenings with their professional photographers. Shout out to Tommy, my favorite photographer, who I just had to say, "Hi Tommy," each time I saw him, and without missing a beat, he replied, "Hi Tommy," right back. We took well over 200 photos during the 7-day cruise and about 139 on our 3-day Disney Wish cruise, which goes to show you how much more in photo opportunities they have on the Wish versus their oldest ship, the Magic. That would be one of my complaints after having been on the Wish, which is huge by comparison and has the benefit of Disney learning from every other ship they have built, which is why there are far less photo opportunities on their older Disney Magic. There are kids clubs running all throughout the cruise with lots and lots of activities to keep those kids busy. There are also some impromptu meet and greets throughout the cruise with Disney princesses and Marvel heroes roaming the halls, giving you opportunities to meet them outside of the designated times on the app. We ran into Spider-Man, Thor, Captain America, Captain Marvel, all roaming the halls, as well as Donald, Chip and Dale, Cinderella, Belle, and Daisy just randomly roaming the halls on the main 3 lower decks. Each one of those meet and greets was a great experience in itself. Not just a quick photo, but an interaction with the actual characters. Spider-Man was always a delight to talk to, as if I'm talking to Peter Parker himself. There's plenty of adult-oriented audience participation shows as well, including the risque Quest scavenger hunt, which included presenting things such as a tattoo in a hidden location and a man wearing lipsticks. So be sure to bring clothes and shoes that easily come on and off. Even if you don't see the main shows every night, there's usually quality musicians playing throughout the ship, karaoke in the main lounge, and still lots and lots of stuff to do for the kids. Now, moving on to the layout, you can tell that Disney has learned a lot since they built their oldest ship in the fleet. The Disney Magic is much smaller than the Disney Wish, and the layout is like most cruise ships, with an atrium in the middle of the ship and a few top decks that contain the rest of the entertainment elements. There's still a lot to do on this 24-year-old ship. You can tell they've learned to make the atrium a much bigger area on the Disney Wish. One of my few complaints is that the atrium is tightly packed during 2 of the busiest nights, which are Pirate and Formal Night. And with it being a maritime cruise, it was usually packed for the holiday-themed events as well. Speaking with other passengers, I am certain that's an issue with the Magic and the Wonder that was fixed with later cruise ships. Now, service. One of the highlights of any cruise will be the amazing crew. And Disney's crew is particularly amazing. We had several members of the crew and cast members who provided not just exceptional service, but sometimes truly magical experiences, including our wait staff in the dining room, particularly our server Keely, who was a delight the entire cruise. Despite running around busy all the time, she gave us some tips and insights that only the crew can offer, like standing on the starboard side of the ship for the Pirate Night fireworks. Our cabin host Gio, who was also amazing, gave us a different towel animal each night, which Chrissy lives for the towel animals, including a towel birthday cake for Chrissy's birthday. There's also Tommy the photographer, who I mentioned earlier, who even found some of our missing photos and moved them to our account so we didn't miss them. I can't say enough how amazing this crew has been on this ship. So for the crew alone, you should be checking out this ship. All right, let's talk about the room. So on average, the rooms on a Disney ship are bigger than most cruise ships. They usually have to accommodate whole families. And there's more room to walk around, move around, but this is definitely a dated ship. There was a flat screen TV. It's only about 15 inches or so, and I think my monitor on my computer is actually bigger. There's some useful things to use on your TV, so like checking your account or watching informational videos, but the system needs an update as it is very, very slow to navigate. There's tons of Disney movies and a handful of TV shows, as well as a few TV channels, including news and sports. But aside from sleeping and getting ready, probably won't find yourself wasting a lot of time in your room. The bed and bedding was amazing. We both slept pretty well on them, both perfectly soft but firm enough for our bad backs. The room does divide into two different sleeping areas with a curtain, with the couch being transformable into an additional sleeping space. There are no USB outlets like modern ships, but they do have EU and US based plugs on both sides of the bed and a few plugs at the desk vanity area. Plenty of room to plug in all of your electronics to charge each day. However, the plugs were a bit loose, so we found ourselves pulling them out or occasionally knocking them off the wall without realizing it. We were able to hear some noise from the hallways and from the room we were connected to, but for the most part, no unusual noises ever awoke us or bothered us in our room. The room was a bit warm at time, which it wasn't a problem at night, but we did wish we could have made it cooler. The ship overall was very warm, another sign that the ship is a bit dated. My wife, who freezes everywhere she goes, was frequently warm, which means that I'm probably drenched in sweat. Embarking and disembarking. So this ship went out of Galveston for the Maritime cruise. It will be absent next year as it's going into dry dock for an overhaul, but we expected the following Thanksgiving for Maritime all over again in 2024 with a facelift. Embarking was easy. We arrived around 12:30, and by that time they were already allowing all passengers on board. You load from Terminal 2 in Galveston. We used a convenient express parking provided by the port that is directly next to Terminal 2 and inside the port's protected area. After I dropped off Chrissy and our bags, I parked, took about 2 minutes to walk to the terminal, and we were immediately in queue for security screening and check-in. Total process took about 30 minutes, and we were on the ship. We had no hang-ups at security. We brought on 2 bottles of wine and no soda, but they didn't even blink an eye at our 2 bottles of wine when it went through security. Now, for disembarking, we went to breakfast and waited for them to call our disembarking group. But by the time we finished breakfast, everyone was allowed to disembark. So we then waited in a very long line, probably like an hour in line on the ship, and then another 10 to 15 minutes in the terminal to clear customs and leave the terminal. The wait on the ship was pretty long, but you can probably leave earlier or wait longer until the lines die down. Our disembarking on the Disney Wish was the complete opposite. It took very little time to get off the ship and a long, long time to clear customs. I think it took us an hour and a half in Port Canaveral on the Disney Wish to clear customs. It took forever. Mustering. So Disney appears to be back to the older style of mustering, unfortunately. So instead of utilizing the more digital way that most ships are doing now, when you arrive anytime after embarking, you just check into your muster station. They show you in small groups how to put on your life jacket and safety briefing. Instead, you have to gather at your mustering station at the designated time, ship wide, and wait for every single person on the ship to arrive at their muster station before proceeding with the brief. It was a pretty short brief, but we still had a few people to wait for, and we were one of the last people to arrive. So don't really care for that way of mustering. Let me know if I missed anything, or if there's anything you want to know, be sure to ask us in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Conclusion. Overall, it's still a very good cruise. Although still an expensive cruise, the price of our cruise was comparable to the price we paid on a 7-day on Carnival's new flagship Mardi Gras or Royal Caribbean's Wonder of the Seas. Both of those are their new flagship on similar itinerary. I always expect to pay more for a Disney cruise, but you will get an amazing experience. I will probably cruise on the Magic again, more than likely after its next overhaul, and hopefully some of the issues like the air conditioning get addressed. The entertainment, shows, crew, service, and food are all still top-notch despite the age of the ship, which has been well kept for being nearly a quarter of a century old. That's it for now. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next time.